Press your palm against this stone. Feel it. It is warm, not from the Egyptian sun, though that sun is merciless enough to crack stone and break men, but from something far older, something holding heat since before Rome existed, since before Greece had philosophers, since before Troy was built and burned and forgotten. The block beneath your hand weighs as much as 2 African elephants, and there are 2.3 million of them above you, pressed together with a precision so absolute you cannot slide a human hair between the joints. You are standing at the base of the last surviving wonder of the ancient world, the only one that didn't fall. And somewhere inside this mountain of stone, sealed behind millions of tons of perfectly fitted limestone, there is a room, a void, hidden, silent, waiting. Today, through muon tomography and AI-assisted reconstruction, we descend into the Great Pyramid and confront discoveries permanently rewriting the history of the ancient world. We will walk this desert in the age of its gods. We will meet the men who moved mountains, and we will stand at the threshold of a hidden chamber confirmed by modern science, yet unexplained for 4,500 years. The stone is warm beneath your hand. It has been waiting. You need to understand where you are standing before you can understand what was built here. The Giza Plateau, Egypt, approximately 2560 BCE. This is not the fringe of civilization. This is the absolute center, the beating theological heart of the most organized, most cosmologically obsessed society the ancient world had ever produced. To your east, the Nile flows in its great annual rhythm, depositing rich black silt that makes this ribbon of land the most fertile on earth. To your west, nothing. Absolute howling desert stretching without mercy to the horizon and far beyond. The ancient Egyptians called that western desert the Duat, the realm of Osiris, the kingdom of the dead, the place where the sun descended each night to fight its way back to morning through serpents and shadow. And it was on this precise boundary, this razor's edge between the world of the living and the kingdom of the dead, that they chose to build their greatest statement about eternity. The plateau is a shelf of natural limestone, elevated above the floodplain, close enough to the river that quarried blocks could be floated in on barges during the inundation, high enough that what they were building would be visible from 100 miles in every direction. A beacon for the living, a threshold for the dead. Here, on the knife's edge between two worlds, every stone was placed with theological intention, every angle calculated against the stars themselves. The Great Pyramid of Khufu, Akhet Khufu, meaning the horizon of Khufu, once rose 481 feet into the Egyptian sky, sheathed in 144,000 polished Tura limestone casing blocks so brilliantly white they blazed like a second star on the horizon. Herodotus, visiting 2,000 years after its completion, recorded that the casing stones bore inscriptions detailing the workers' provisions: onions, radishes, garlic, consumed during construction. Those stones are almost entirely gone now, stripped across medieval centuries to build the mosques of Cairo, until the pyramid's brilliant skin was reduced to the raw wounded core you see today. At its base, 13 acres aligned to true north with an accuracy of 0.05 degrees, surpassing Greenwich Observatory, built 4,000 years later. But it is not the outer surface that will stop your breath. It is what has been sealed in absolute darkness at the pyramid's core, undisturbed, unrecorded, unknown, while every civilization on Earth rose and collapsed around it. A space so deliberately concealed that 10,000 explorers passed within meters of it across 40 centuries and heard nothing. Not a sound, not a whisper, not a single tremor in the stone to betray what lay beyond. Just silence, just darkness, just waiting. Forget everything you believe about how this was built. The slaves, the whips, the image of broken multitudes crushed beneath a tyrant's indifferent ambition. It is wrong. Demonstrably, archaeologically, completely wrong. In 1990, a tourist's horse stumbled near the plateau's southern edge and cracked its hoof through the desert floor into a hidden cemetery no one had known existed for 45 centuries. Inside, archaeologists found the workers who built the Great Pyramid, and what their bones said overturned 2 millennia of assumption in a single excavation season. These men ate well. Isotopic analysis reveals a diet rich in beef, sheep, and goat. Protein nutrition that significantly exceeded what ordinary Egyptian citizens consumed. Their bones carry healed fractures, cleanly set and properly treated, evidence of organized medical care, meaning someone valued them enough to heal them. The cemetery itself was built with care. These were not the graves of expendable bodies. These were the graves of men who mattered. You are one of these men, standing in that bakery before the sun has risen. The air is thick with fermenting grain, wood smoke, and the mineral sharpness of limestone dust that never fully leaves your lungs. Somewhere above you, invisible in the pre-dawn dark, the pyramid rises, and you know its exact current height because you have watched it grow stone by stone for 3 years of your life. Your name might be Mirror. That name is real, carved in careful hieratic script into a papyrus diary discovered in 2013 at the ancient Red Sea harbor of Wadi El Jarf, the oldest first-hand account of pyramid construction ever found. Merer was a middle-ranking official overseeing 40 men he called, with unmistakable pride, the followers of the Khufu star. His diary records the logistics of transporting Tura limestone on barges, down the Nile, through purpose-built canals, directly to Giza. Dates, block counts, rations issued. The precise bureaucracy of a civilization that understood, down to the last jar of beer, the weight of what it was building. You do not think of yourself as a slave. You are building a God's passage into eternity. You record every detail as evidence of your contribution to something that will outlast everything. And yet, for all that Merer recorded, for all the healed bones and organized cemeteries, there is one place inside the pyramid that no worker's diary ever mentions. No overseer noted it. No architect sketched it on any document that survived. No priest explained it in any religious text ever translated. A space so deliberately concealed that the men who built it carried its secret to their graves and left behind nothing but the void itself, dark and sealed and silent. And somewhere, deep in the stone above you right now, it is still there. Here is the sum of what humanity knew about this pyramid's interior for 2,000 years. 3 chambers. The subterranean chamber, hacked from bedrock 60 feet below the base, unfinished, purpose still genuinely debated. The Queen's Chamber, misnamed entirely by medieval Arab explorers, its corbelled niche still bearing chemical residue traces that some researchers believe evidence a ritual process connected to the resurrection ceremony. And the King's Chamber, red Aswan granite walls, 9 ceiling slabs each weighing up to 70 tons, and at its center, the lidless empty sarcophagus of Khufu himself. No mummy, no treasure, empty since 820 CE, when Caliph Al-Mamun's workers tunneled inside and found only silence. 3 chambers, 1 empty sarcophagus. 4.5 millennia of assumption that this was all there was. Then came 2017, and a technology built to study the fundamental particles of the universe. Cosmic radiation striking Earth's upper atmosphere generates a continuous rain of subatomic particles called muons. They penetrate solid rock, moving through limestone the way light moves through frosted glass. But they pass through empty space faster. By deploying detector arrays inside and outside the pyramid and measuring the differential movement of hundreds of millions of muons over months of patient observation. The International Scan Pyramids Consortium, physicists from Japan's Nagoya University, France's CEA, and Egypt's Ministry of Antiquities, produced a particle physics X-ray of the entire monument. The void that appeared on their screens was not a crack, not a settling gap. It was a deliberate, architecturally intentional empty space directly above the Grand Gallery. At least 30 meters long, its ceiling chevron-shaped, mirroring the stress-relieving chambers above the King's Chamber, but on a scale dwarfing anything previously known inside this structure. Its full dimensions remain unmapped, its contents completely unknown. And in every ancient Egyptian text ever translated, the pyramid texts, the coffin texts, the Merer diary, there is not a single reference to its existence. Hidden deliberately, hidden perfectly. For 4,500 years, if you believe this void holds answers capable of rewriting our understanding of the ancient world, type "the hidden chamber" in the comments right now. But a void confirmed is not a void understood. And to understand what was sealed here so carefully, so permanently, you first have to face the most devastating truth in this entire story. The truth of what the people who could have told us chose, or were forced, to take with them forever. The civilization that built the Great Pyramid did not end in a single catastrophic day. It ended slowly, quietly, without anyone fully realizing it was happening until it was already complete. The mortuary cult of Khufu, the institution of priests whose sacred function was to maintain the pyramid complex and perform the daily rituals keeping the dead king's Ka moving through the afterlife, began fragmenting within centuries of its founding. By the collapse of the Old Kingdom, around 2181 BCE, the centralized royal authority that had funded the cult, staffed the complex, and preserved the theological knowledge encoded in the pyramid's geometry, had dissolved into political fragmentation and administrative collapse. The priests dispersed. The administrative records, whatever archive once cataloged the pyramid's construction beyond Merer's single surviving diary, deteriorated in buildings that no one maintained, in a civilization suddenly too consumed by surviving the present to preserve the past. You are standing in that moment now. You are one of the last priests who still knows. The New Kingdom Egyptians who came later, Khufu's own cultural descendants, fewer than 50 generations removed, visited Giza with deep reverence and almost total incomprehension. They sensed the sacredness. They could no longer read the language in which it was expressed. Then the physical stripping began. Not in malice, but in pragmatism. A powerful earthquake in 1303 CE loosened casing blocks across the upper courses. What the earthquake started, human hands finished efficiently. The brilliant white Tura limestone was hauled to Cairo's construction sites. The skin of the monument, the part that blazed like a second sun that bore the inscriptions Herodotus read, was recycled into walls and mosque foundations that still stand in Cairo today. Gone. Not in a single catastrophic afternoon. Gone in the slow, undramatic, perfectly mundane way that most knowledge disappears. One decision at a time, by people who did not understand what they were unmaking. And the void above the Grand Gallery sat in absolute darkness, in the specific, mineral, airless dark that only exists inside sealed stone, while every empire the world produced rose and fell in the daylight outside, waiting for an instrument that wouldn't exist for 45 centuries, waiting, as it turns out, for right now. The Scan Pyramids project did not stop with its 2017 announcement. It deepened, it sharpened, it got more precise. New muon detectors were engineered, compact enough to insert through the pyramid's existing narrow shafts, sensitive enough to resolve architectural details the original arrays could only approximate. Researchers from Japan's High Energy Accelerator Research Organization, France's CEA, and Egypt's Ministry of Antiquities fed months of particle data into AI reconstruction algorithms trained specifically to interpret density differentials inside stone structures of this mass. Analysis that would have consumed a generation of human researchers now runs on a server cluster in weeks. What those models produced is extraordinary. The leading hypothesis is structural. A grand stress-relieving chamber engineered to distribute the tens of millions of tons pressing down on the Grand Gallery from above, preventing catastrophic collapse of the pyramid's most architecturally complex interior passage. If correct, it means Khufu's architects possessed an intuitive mastery of compressive force management that modern civil engineers describe, carefully and specifically, as remarkable. They solved in 2560 BCE, without calculus or modeling software, a structural engineering problem of genuine complexity. But there is a second hypothesis, quieter, more carefully hedged in the literature, harder to prove, and harder to dismiss. What if the void is not structural at all? What if it is sacred? What if this is the space that Khufu's theological architects designated as the passage of the Ka, the soul's animating force? Through the internal geography of the afterlife. A chamber never intended to be entered by any living person, but to exist, sealed and perfect and eternal, holding something that was never meant to be physical. A room not for the body, but for the soul. Not for the living, but for the God, designed to remain closed forever, because whatever it contains was placed there for an audience of exactly one. We do not know. The void has not been breached. The scientific consensus is unambiguous. The pyramid's integrity cannot be compromised for access, however profound the potential discovery. No stone will be touched, but the AI models continue to refine. The detectors grow more sensitive. The data accumulates in servers in Cairo and Tokyo and Paris, in laboratories Khufu could not have imagined, processing information about a structure built for reasons we are still, carefully, painstakingly learning to read. The answers are already in the data, waiting, as this pyramid has always waited, for the exact right question. What does this teach us? It teaches us that the distance between us and the ancient world is an illusion we maintain for our own comfort. The men who built this pyramid had names. They had managers, diaries, and pride. They healed each other's fractures and recorded their rations and called their work crews by names that carried real affection. They were not slaves. They were not abstractions. They were people doing the most important work they could imagine. And they were right about its importance. The pyramid endured. The void endured. The mystery endured. And now, with particle physics and AI reconstruction, and researchers stubborn enough to spend years pointing cosmic ray detectors at ancient stone, we are finally learning to read what was left for us, not in spite of the silence, because of it. If this story moves you, if you want to be here when the next void is mapped and the next impossible chamber pulled from the dark, subscribe to Forgotten Ages. Hit the bell. The past is not dead. It is not even finished with us yet. The stone is still warm beneath your hand, just as it was warm under Merer's hand, under the last priest who knew the void's true name, under every generation that pressed their palm here and felt something they could not explain. 4,500 years of human hands searching for an answer sealed inside the stone. We are only just learning how to listen.